I'd like to start out by saying I am talking about what I know about YFI and YFI. I obviously do not have all the right answers. This is only my opinion. I've only been giving this like serious consideration and thought for like the past couple weeks now. Been watching the project passively for a while, but I think that what's going on with governance right now is incredibly exciting to me. So just want to caveat by saying like I have no special knowledge, or I'm not a representative of the project by any means, but just trying to do my part as a good community member. So with that in mind, hi, I'm Cooper. I'm editor of DeFi Rate, contributor to Defiant, doing a lot of DAO stuff with all of you on this call through Metacartel and Rate Yield. So the past couple of weeks, I've just been really fascinated with DeFi governance. And I think that a lot of projects are trying to do DeFi governance, but not many are successfully engaging the community in a way that they desired. So with YFI, the reason why it really was interesting to me is that obviously, as you all know, there was no pre-mine, which meant that there was no coins allocated beforehand. There was no initial sale. You couldn't really buy it on Uniswap or anything like that. And I think just sort of the off-the-cuff nature of it was something that, people had to be really in the know to get involved early on. And this was something that really caught my eye. I was like, hey, I have all these questions about YFI. I want to know what's going on, but I have no clue where to talk about it. So I DM'd Andre. He was super receptive, basically set up this governance forum called gov.yearn.finance. And this is just a forum for everyone to come and talk about all things YFI. It's definitely been the most active forum I've seen to date. And I think that the response from the community and the amount of people that are trying to participate and give their voice is like probably the best example of DeFi governance I've seen to date. So price aside, regardless of what's going on with the yield farming and whatnot, I think that that's the aspect that got me most excited. And for this call, if anyone has any questions about, how it's set up, the way that yield farming works, any of like the weird cadences that have been established, I'm happy to answer that. So I'll kind of stop there for a second and let people just kind of start with questions, and then I'll probably go on a little spiel about any particular topic as they come up.
Thanks, Cooper. I have a question. So I think one of the big topics around decentralized governance is like, how do you truly keep it decentralized, right? Like if you look at protocols and platforms such as Compound, it's like a couple of whales that are dominating governance. And, as you mentioned, not having a pre-mine, I think will probably help with that. But what are some other best practices to think about going forward?
Yeah, I think that trying to step away from the capital, one vote, or one token, one vote thing is something that a lot of projects are looking into. With YFI specifically, they did this unique thing where you had to be participating in the ecosystem to get a governance vote. So this was a staking pool called governance, and you had to participate in the Y curve to YFI token pool to be able to get governance shares or voting shares essentially. And I think that trying to do some sort of on-ramp to governance where someone can't just buy tokens and then immediately just vote with them, kind of increasing that voting on-ramp is a good starting point for sure. Something that I thought was pretty interesting about the way that it was designed for YFI.
And with YFI, is there also the concept of like politicians within governance? Like, can you delegate your votes to someone else?
Yeah, that's definitely something that's being built right now. It wasn't built out of the gate. I think that, Andre had no intention to make this as big as it did. He literally just released this really random blog post, and I just saw it and happened to write about it. And I think that when people sort of caught on to the, like I said, the off-the-cuff nature of it, it just really went crazy. But that just goes to say that none of this, what happens when all these people are participating in governance, there even are people that want to participate in governance. Like all of this is kind of being applied retroactively. So more or less like a catch-up project for the current iteration of how delegation works.
And do you think that with this whole like idea of delegating votes to politicians, do you think there is some kind of centralization risk that comes with that?
Yeah, I think that if it's done incorrectly, it can be. That's kind of what we see on a lot of layer one chains like EOS perhaps, where it's like a very small amount of people. But hopefully we can do incentives or reward structures that empower delegates to be more active in their participation and in their way of reaching their conclusions. I don't want it to be a thing where you delegate to someone and just because they vote yes, they collect rewards for you, which is basically what we see today. I'm hopeful that over time, governance will become a little bit more social to the point where whether it is conviction voting or whether it is voting on the proper outcome or something like that, it's different parameters to make that reward program a little bit more intuitive and a little bit more intensive for the delegates is a good starting point, I think.
Cool. This is a super fascinating topic. Thanks for doing this AMA, Cooper.
Thanks for coming.
How do you vote now? Like, do you stake? There for a while you staked in the contract, but then they kind of said they weren't doing it anymore. Is that still how you vote, or is it just I guess that's my question. How do you vote now in governance?
Yeah, so as it worked, basically up until this point, there was a balancer pool for Y curve and YFI. You supplied tokens to the balancer pool, and then you staked those balancer pool tokens in gov.finance. And basically that proportion that you had stake was your voting power. Now, as of this week, there is a proposal to basically change it so it's YFI only voting. I'm not sure if there's going to be like another staking component where you have to stake those tokens for voting power, but right now it's undergoing a change where basically you can vote directly with YFI. And to give some context as to why that was, you know, the old process was really cool for getting people to participate, but it was a 98-2 Y curve to YFI pool, which basically meant that if you were supplying stable coins to that pool, you had exponentially more voting power than someone who was actually supplying YFI to that pool. So basically this new proposal makes it so that people actually have to be holding YFI to be able to participate in those governance pools and making those decisions.
So is that like from now on, there will be no pool on balance at all? That's going to be removed completely.
Nope, it's just the voting itself. So like I said, the way that you got voting power before was staking to one of the balancer pools, but moving forward, it's just going to be strictly with YFI tokens as opposed to being in that balancer pool. But those balancer pools are going to keep, yeah, they're going to still be there. And there's actually a lot of discussion right now to basically keep the yield farming going and allocating rewards to participating in those pools, and probably some tweaks to the actual pools themselves. So right now the DAI pool is 98-2. And this basically means that if you enter the pool, you're selling YFI. So what people are looking to do is change that weighting a little bit so that, you know, basically just trying to expand the liquidity. There's talks of like an 80-20 pool right now. And I think that the eventual goal is to have 50-50 YFI ETH pools for useful liquidity. But to start out with how scarce it was, 98-2 was a way to sort of bootstrap that liquidity without, you know, without people just getting wrecked from a permanent loss.
Are there any other people have a question? Because I want to dig in a bit more about this balancer stuff because I don't still fully understand. Yeah. So if I understand, let me just show the, how do I, am I sharing? I'll share screen. Because it's like, by the way, how many people actually staking got the YFI? I don't know how.
I don't have a number off the top of my head. If I had to guess, like 1,000 maybe.
Really? I think I put, yeah. So I put this. Can you guys see this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just, can you actually recap the whole process? Because I think this is like one of the super confusing stuff, which I'm very hard to get like head around.
So I'm just going to kind of go off the cuff. I'm not sure if I'm going to touch on everything that's in this diagram, but YFI as a platform is a yield aggregator. What this means is you supply liquidity somewhere and it takes it and gets the best return for you. YFI was responsible for the Y curve pool. Curve is a stablecoin aggregator. And the very first way that you could earn YFI was providing liquidity to the Y curve pool. And basically what this was is you staked stablecoins. So as you can see at the very top there, DAI USD, USDT, TUSD. And you got this Y curve token in return. You could basically take that representation of your liquidity, stake that in this YFI platform, ygov.finance, and then get YFI in return as yield farming rewards. And once that sort of kicked off and people were farming YFI, there was this conversation about being like, hey, we need to have liquidity for this on secondary markets. So that opened up a balancer pool. This was 98% DAI, 2% YFI. And basically same thing, where if you participated and gave liquidity to that, you could stake your position and get other YFI in return. So then after that pool started up, there was a third pool that happened, which is this 98% Y curve and 2% YFI. And this is basically just like, you know, stacking the YFI positions. So basically you're taking that very first Y curve position, putting that in balancer with YFI, and then staking that for the governance rights that I was talking about before. And obviously up until now, there was some incentive to do that as well. So 30,000 YFI total, 10,000 YFI allocated to each of those three pools.
So, so if you just want issue like a YFI just for the governance purpose, why do you have to go through balancer doing this 2%, 98% things?
The intent was just that people had to actually be participating in liquidity in the ecosystem to have a voice in governance. So basically what Andre didn't want to happen, or what I assume he didn't want to happen, is basically people being able to just farm Wi-Fi and just vote and then sell it right away, or people just farming Y-curve tokens, using that to vote without having like a vested interest in making the platform more extensive. So by using this sort of staking mechanism, it kind of required skin in the game. So when you vote on a proposal, your tokens are locked for 3 days. So what this means is that if you went and voted on a proposal, you were basically forced to provide liquidity to the ecosystem for 3 days. In that sense is a lot different, I think, than a lot of other governance systems, and something just to encourage people to be helping the ecosystem if they want to participate in governance.
Why do you think the like from start of this idea to like the first, let's say, well, the first 30,000, which was all of them at one time, like, why do you think why do you think it was distributed over like the course of 1 week, which is such a short period of time, versus why wasn't that longer, like over the first month or something? You have an opinion on that?
Yeah, so it's actually a trend that I think is really interesting. You know, as I stated at the beginning of the call, Andre did not expect any of this hype to happen. I think it was meant to be a bootstrap program. And actually one of the problems we're seeing right now with yield farming is that teams will set issuance schedules for like a year or 2 years, even 12 months. And it will be, the token price will go up drastically, and that issuance schedule will just be completely skewed from day one. So I think that Andre's intent was to have it be such a short period of time so that these sort of tweaks and modification could happen. And I'd even be willing to bet if he knew that it was going to take off so hard, he would have been willing to just do like literally 1 day at a time and like try and basically mitigate that 5,000% APY that ended up happening. You know, I think the intention was make the distribution schedule short enough so that there can be changes made to make sure that it's somewhat sane over the life of the project.
I saw somewhere that like there's some proposal about like to make it like in total 50,000 or something.
Yeah, the meme about like a cap supply was more of just like it literally was that a meme. I don't think that the intention was to ever have super scarce amount of Wi-Fi forever. I think that this was meant to be literally a bootstrap program, and once people saw the price going as high as it did, that's when people were like, oh, let's keep it at 30,000 so that, you know, this is a huge meme. But like, even if you look at really any DeFi protocol doing yield farming, the amount of tokens being distributed are kind of in those increments. You know, Balancer does 145,000 tokens per week. I want to say Compound does around 100,000 or something like that. So like, the difference being that there is just no total supply with Wi-Fi. The only supply is what's being issued for yield farming at any given time. So like the actual supply of that is not too different from the amount of yield farming allocations elsewhere. It was just issued in such a way that there was not this, you know, gradual foresight to making like a max supply or something like that. And I expect that yield farming will continue on in the future. And it'll probably be in a way that, as Sky alluded to, will go for a longer period of time and be much more intentional about the amount people are yield farming to try and keep the program going for a longer period of time.
How do you?
Yep, go on.
I think it's a really cool experiment. How do you keep this experiment from blowing up to where they herd and corral all this liquidity into some sort of compromised contract or token where they can steal the funds? I mean, I'm not saying anything about all the other YFI, you know, Roman numerals, but how do you, I mean, I guess people are kind of dumb. Maybe there is no really answer to this question, but is there any way to kind of slow it down where people can know where the money's going to, or do people just YOLO in? So
I think there is a way, and obviously that would be Andre sort of going to people like Samsung and QuantStamp, who have been doing some audits before he actually deploys. But honestly, given the nature of his production style, which, you know, I don't think that there's a right answer for, I don't think that's something that's going to happen. And really the only thing here is just making sure that it's tough, right? Because like people do just YOLO into contracts and they don't actually look at what's going on. There are definitely bugs in those contracts. And I think a large part of why the APY and the price of Wi-Fi has gotten so high is because you are taking on such a large degree of risk, so much more than any other project. That's sort of the return for going into pools that you know you could literally lose all of your money tomorrow, is like one of the reasons why people are valuing these particular yield farming strategies higher than other ones that have had audits and, you know, have these tangible distribution schedules for these really long periods of time. It's like really sporadic in the moment type thing. And I think that I'd like to say that everyone participating in these knows that they could very well lose their money tomorrow, or at least I hope they do, because I think that Andre's been trying to be very vocal that he tests and prod, and I don't envision him changing that anytime soon.
I have a question. So I got into all this stuff late, and I'm still trying to kind of understand like yield farming and everything. But so I got into the Y curve pool and received like a very fractional amount of YFI, and then it stopped. And so it's like in some type of governance period now. Like, what happens next? Do I need to switch to something else? And is there still like other fees that are being going to be rewarded through Curve or anything like that? Sorry if this is a dumb question too.
No, it's not. And I think that right now the conversation is how do we continue the same programs that were going before? So it's my understanding that there will be more YFI rewards for being in that Y curve pool. The Curve governance tokens you'll get from just being in the Curve pool is completely separate from YFI. That's something that's been in discussion for a couple months now, and a big reason why people are excited about Curve. You know, the way they're doing their distribution is retroactively. So whereas something like Compound or Balancer, they only started rewarding people from the day that they announced liquidity mining, basically all of the capital you have in Curve now will be used to consider the allocation you receive when that token's minted, probably over the next couple weeks here.
Okay.
But you're still getting,
Deacon, also, I think we may have even skipped the earliest part. And Cooper, you talk really fast, so you may have mentioned this, but people probably missed this. But Deacon, like when you hold this Y curve multi-token token or whatever, the whole point of that thing is that it automatically moves the money around between like the different lending platforms to chase the highest yields, and it does it all automatically for you. So if you want to yield farm, the easiest way is to just hold this Y curve token, and it will chase the highest yields for you. It kind of a little bit ignoring like risk between the platforms, but that's the whole point. Is my understanding is Andre made this because he made it for himself initially because he didn't want to chase every day the highest yield. So this thing does it. But the interesting thing is when you can only change allocations when someone does a transaction. So he was having to do a transaction himself every single day to change allocations. So by bringing in the community, every time someone does any transaction, it can use that same amount to reallocate between different pools. That's why it costs, I think, like instead of like $7 transaction fee, it often costs like $20 or something, right? Because it's like actually looking and doing a reallocation across all the different pools. So it's awesome just to hold the Y curve instead of chasing anything else on your own, is in my opinion, right?
Yeah, and we actually saw there was a new strategy with USDC that just got launched. It's part of this Y Vault program. And to Sky's point, basically you deposit USDC, YFI goes ahead and allocates that across any possible area that you can earn interest in DeFi, kind of collects that yield and then normalizes it back to USDC. So you enter with a stablecoin, and when you withdraw, you're basically just taking all the profit that was from DeFi's best yield farming opportunities.
Is it a BUSD?
BUSD was a different curve pool. It's built on the Y token standard, which is like the same concept of, you know, what Sky was just alluding to with Y curve, but it's kind of just a different stablecoin pool that incorporates Binance's stablecoin as well.
That's Binance USD. I see.
So Cooper, I did have a question. When you have this Y on curve, when you have like the Y token, and you can let's say you want to withdraw it. How do you decide if you want to withdraw it all into USDC or all into DAI or all into Tether or all into other one? Is it just a matter of, because they're all different numbers, is it a matter of which one you prefer to hold as like the normal coin? Because DAIs, there's always this premium and you get like way less if you get DAI, and it seems like your DAI disappears in the middle of the entire process.
Yeah, you can withdraw to whatever mix you want. You can do 100% any particular stable coin. And what Curve does on their interface is you get a bonus if you withdraw or supply in a stable coin that's not on the peg or sort of under basketed, I guess. So it's really up to you as the holder, what do you want to withdraw to? You can do 100% to DAI, 100% to USDC. The default is just a mix of everything, where it basically normalizes to whatever the basket is, giving you a pro rata split of those. But yeah, I typically always withdraw my Y curve into one particular stablecoin like USDC.
It's a bit probably not new question. There's different product like synthetic, which has a kind of SD file, which should be the basket of different things, and also M stable is also the kind of basket currency between the different stable currency, and the balancer itself is also like to have some aspect of automatically balancing to the best yield. So I'm quite confused. What's the difference actually of each product?
Yeah, so to summarize very quickly, SDeFi is literally just a basket of different DeFi tokens. That's a synthetic basket. So you're not actually buying the different tokens. You're just basically buying a collection that's long or short on DeFi based on the underlying performance of different tokens. M-Stable is specifically just stable coins, as you alluded to. They are only using those four in particular. And then Balancer is like whatever tokens you want. So I think it's just like the idea of having a basket is sort of the only similarity between them, but those actual baskets across all those platforms are completely different in their makeup.
So you don't really own the like yield thingy, like a liquidity mining stuff on the other platform. It's only YCAR which owns.
Yeah, and that's specifically because of this new Wi-Fi program. That's not to say that those other ones won't do a similar incentive where by holding that basket, you're getting some sort of reward in return. But for right now, the reason why Y-Curve got so popular is because by holding that and staking it, you were able to get this Wi-Fi token.
See.
I have a question. So actually I have two. So the first one is in terms of rebalancing your portfolio, so to speak, does that incur any sort of ETH gas cost? Because I know for me individually trying to reallocate my tokens nowadays has become like an incredibly expensive endeavor. So yeah, that's my first question. Second question is, are there other projects that are doing something similar to what YFI is doing, kind of being like a robo-advisor for reallocating your assets?
Yeah, so first question about gas cost. If you want to withdraw from these positions, that's obviously going to cost a lot of capital. But when you're actually in the Y-Curve position or SDeFi, for example, or the stable or M stable in MUSD, there's no allocation that happens to you. You don't have to make any transactions to reallocate there. That kind of all happens behind the scenes. And the only transaction that you'll incur is when you want to exit that position. As for your second question about other robo-advisors, there's a project called Rarity Capital, which is looking to do automated yield farming. There's one by Staked called Robo, or I forget the exact name of it, but yeah, it's been around for a while, by Staked. And then there's a new project called YFI Finance that's looking to do this as well. So I envision there's going to be quite a few robo yield farmers coming onto the market in the next few months for sure.
Oh yeah, I think I read about Rarity Capital, and I think maybe you covered it in the Defiant or something like that. So are there any major points of difference then between how Rarity Capital operates versus YFI?
YFI is pretty YOLO. Well, they'll do literally anything that gets you the highest yield, whereas Rarity Capital is very contained in the platforms that it's willing to get yield from.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's really interesting, unique.
One is fast and has already existed for 2 weeks, and the other ones are slow and don't exist, I guess, which comes with risk.
Yeah.
I got a question. When you're designing these systems, you mentioned increasing the time period of yield farming. Do you guys ever think about designing these systems to just yield a very reasonable 8 to 15%, something better than the legacy financial market, but nothing crazy, and then you could extend the yield farming for 5, 10, 20 years?
Yeah, I think that's the intention that every project has, right? But what they can't account for is the irrationality of the markets buying these tokens at such high valuations. So basically when they're designed, I think that the target is 5 to 10%. But then once the token moons, that basically just takes the APY to these kind of crazy levels. Like M-Stable, for example, their yield farming at their seed valuation was actually supposed to be 10 to 15%. But then when the token listed at, say, $3 to $5, that 10 to 15% got multiplied by the 10x that the token went. And now you're looking at that 500% APY that you see today.
So what do you think accounts for Wi-Fi's popularity? Like, I feel like I went from like having never heard of it to having like every comment in my feed about, or everything in my feed about Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I think to me it was really just that you know, no pre-mined nature. Like I keep coming back to that, but it really just was the fact that there was no team behind it. There was no marketing push behind it. You know, there was no sort of favoring of early investors or VCs or anything like that. You know, to kind of draw a parallel to like Bitcoin and the reason why people are Bitcoin maximalists, I think it's really just that aspect of you can only earn it by knowing what's up and doing it yourself. You can't really game the system, or there was no favoring of people who'd happen to have more money than you or happen to be in the know before. Like obviously with the yield farming, you know, that conversation can be argued that if you had more capital or if you were earlier on, you got a lot of Wi-Fi. But I think that premise itself of just like, you know, Andre didn't go out of his way and say to someone like, hey, Wi-Fi is going live today, get ready, or like, hey, buy my tokens. He just launched the contracts, you know, and like didn't tell anyone. CoinGecko reached out and was like, hey, like please put this address somewhere so we can list it. He's like, yeah, sure, I guess that makes sense. But there was definitely no like come to world moment where he did this marketing campaign or, you know, hyped it up or said like, hey, yield farming is going to start tomorrow or something like that. So I don't know. I think that just relative to what we've seen with a lot of other DeFi projects doing liquidity mining, this was really, really different and something that like the sovereign aspect of DeFi really appreciated.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that a lot of technologies that strive to be democratizing have actually ended up not being that. Like we see that with like Web 2, we see that with a lot of like crypto projects today. So yeah, I'll have to like look more into this. I kind of like wrote it off because it was really annoying in my Twitter feed, but it sounds like there's like real merit behind it.
Yeah, and again, from my perspective, the governance forum has been like the best example of that, right? So obviously the price has gone up a lot and people are happy about that, but the governance forum reached 200,000 views in the first week, which is like by far more than any other governance forum that's happened so far. You know, the first post that I did about the Wi-Fi supply ended up getting like 1,000 comments in like a day or two. And it's really just incredible to see all these people coming out of the woodwork and giving their opinion on how this project should shape up, because there actually was this opportunity for them to be valued and heard. And anyone could really make a name for themselves in this community because there was no sort of, you know, inner circle or like someone who deems you better than someone else. Like you do good work, you post a good comment, it goes on chain and then it gets voted in and you can kind of take the claim for that.
Yeah, I think it's really funny how like technology doesn't solve for a lot of like existing problems, right? Like in our real, like at least in the US, it's like hard to get people to vote. I think in decentralized systems, it's also really hard to get people to vote. So it's really cool to see that this is taking off with Wi-Fi.
Definitely.
With
I think the other. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Deacon.
Okay, sorry. So this governance is around the protocol kind of layer, right? Is there any plans to do more like community DAO kind of more traditional stuff? Or?
Yeah, there definitely is. I think that I've noticed more and more the speed of this thing is like literally insane to try and put any sort of cadence or frequency behind. You know, like I'll go to bed one night and see that all this new stuff has happened since I went to sleep. Everyone just kind of sporadically throws stuff at the forum and hopes that it sticks. I don't think that that's sustainable in the long term, but to your point, you know, I am working with a couple community members to do like a DAO that allocates funding to key contributors, trying to figure out different ways to basically allocate funding to people who want to work on the project seriously. You know, I think that right now it's basically people throwing something up on the forum, and granted they put a lot of time into that, but then hoping that like Andre will build it or someone that's, you know, kind of behind the scenes will build it. And for this to actually scale, there does need to be a little bit more structure in place for the way that these protocol upgrades happen, and then the way that all these different avenues are sort of corralled and hurdled in a way that it doesn't become so, you know, ruthless or just sort of sporadic, I guess, to keep using that word.
Is a voting tool offline thing, or is it actually the smart contract stuff Andre made it?
Smart contracts.
So he made it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so it's a custom thing.
Yeah, and again, that's anyone can post on the forum on gov.yearn.finance. Anyone can make a proposal on there. If it gets enough social support, it'll typically go to a vote on chain. But again, this is like the thing, like there's no like blockers in place. Like anyone can throw a proposal on chain. And as you can see on the interface, it's super confusing as to like what proposal is what. And so people have to really like kind of pair the two together. And there's a quorum in place where basically proposals can only pass if X amount of Wi-Fi actually votes on that poll. So it makes it so that someone can throw up a proposal, just vote it for themselves, and then it's just like some giant protocol decision that happens, and that's like not passing because they didn't reach quorum.
Is it possible if you can share your screen to see how the governance UI works?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
And this whole thing, like about the Discord channel and Telegram and the forum itself, did it all formed after Andre just announced, or did he approach any of you guys in advance to say, "Hey, I'm starting this. Should we start up?" Or which
Nope.
is us? Or he just posted and
Yep.
then you guys just right.
Yeah, 100%. That's like the whole ethos of the project is Andre just deploys something on mainnet and then people figure out how to make it understandable or like how to actually rally behind it, I guess.
He did at least
You
a
definitely-
Telegram, right? He had Telegram channel before.
Yeah, but when Wi-Fi launched, it went to read only, so people couldn't be spamming it. So that's why these new Discord groups have popped up and why like this governance forum popped up. It's because there literally was no place to talk about just only Wi-Fi except for on Twitter, which is why it just kind of went so crazy, as Liz, alluded to. Like everyone was just posting about it, and it was all just siloed and scattered. That's why I was like, "Yeah, we need a forum for this because this is insane how much people are talking about it. There's no uniform way to sort of discuss it."
Wow.
I also think there's this like weird, maybe not purposeful power of having like a lower amount of tokens. So like 30,000 tokens, where like no one knew this was going to be $4,000 a token, but even if it was like $500 a token or $100 a token, that's very different than like that. People in this space, like even in the world when they're buying stocks, like they're like, I can't buy Tesla, it costs $1,000, but I could buy this share because it costs $5. It's like they don't realize you can buy shares of pieces of things, right? So the fact that the number is so big, like, oh my God, YFI is $4,000 a token and it only launched a week ago. That's so much more impactful on Twitter than like a token that's worth 30 cents. Like Aave's token Lend is worth 30 cents, but the market cap is much bigger than YFI, but 30 cents compared to 4,000, which one did you get your eyes, right? And so even Aave is now going to do like a reverse split and like create Aave token, right? Which is, they're gonna go from 1.3 billion tokens to 13 million tokens. Maybe eventually they go to 130,000 tokens or something. Because like, I think that actually makes a really big difference when you're getting the attention of people.
Yeah, it is interesting. And for a long time, I was definitely I didn't think that really mattered. If it's just the market cap, that's all that matters. But, when you think about the average psychology of someone buying a token, as you just alluded to, one of the key reasons why Aave is doing this migration is because one Aave being, $3 instead of one Aave being 30 cents is like, to so many people, just like another indicator that this is a strong project. All these just kind of weird psychological things that happen from having a smaller supply with like a project that's viewed as valuable by the community.
Yeah.
Are you ready to share the screen for the voting thing?
Yeah. So it's not much. I'll share it, but don't get too excited. I need actually permission to share. It says.
Yeah, it's like at least they added like some links now. In the beginning, it was literally just a list of things, and you just said for or against. You didn't even know what it was for.
Yep. Let's see here. Yeah, let me know if you need help giving me share access, Makoto.
Oh, what do I have to do?
If you go to participants, there should be an option to allow multiple screen share, and then I should be able to do that.
Participants. Let me just share screen first so that you can navigate me how to share screen. Sorry, I'm that much. Oh no, now I can't see the.
Holy shit, your desktop.
Yeah, I'm sharing desktop right now, right?
No, I mean, all your files on your desktop.
Yeah. I don't know.
You could try and make me host. That's definitely one quick way to do it.
Sorry?
You can make me the host, and that's a quick way to do it.
How do I do that?
If you click on my name on the top right, you should be able to go to more and then assign me host, I believe.
Make host, yes. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so again, much to be desired. Here is the voting dashboard. So basically you just see the number of the vote. You see how many before or against. You can go ahead and register to vote and just vote yes or no. Again, as Sky alluded to, this is actually way better than what it looked like before. Literally at inception, it was just the number, and then it just said for or against. It didn't even show you percentages or anything like that. So at least now there's like a little bit more going on here to be able to do so. This is all happening on gov.yearn.finance. This is basically where you can stake into these different pools that allow you to get rewards. So this is the governance one that's going on right now. And then, as Sky did allude to as well, there actually is a link to the forum now. So this voting dashboard takes you to gov.yearn.finance, and this is sort of where all of the conversation happens regarding different proposals.
Don't you have to be kind of a whale to be able to do the governance stuff? And you need like a bunch of balancer pool tokens or something?
Yeah, in the past, you had to have at least 1,000 balancer pool tokens, which equated to like, I'll say roughly like $3,000. But with YFI only voting coming up, I don't think that that same principle will be in place. But you can see here, like 31 proposals already. And like this is basically everything that you can imagine what's going on. Proposal to have YFI come on the Bankless podcast, on Bankless podcast. Like it's basically the most sporadic form of governance thing, from changing the YFI supply to going to YFI only voting. Yeah. Adding link as a vault, like almost intentional. It's designed for sharing. But I will say, man, the other moderators that have stepped up to do this forum is incredible. Literally all that I can say I did was just spawn this forum and do like the very first 2 proposals here. But all this sort of categorizing that you're seeing here, making sure that you can see what proposals have actually passed if they're ongoing. Look, you can see this is in voting right here. You can see that some of these down here didn't reach quorum. You can see that they approved. This has all just been community members rallying together to do this. No one's getting paid to do it. And literally the fact that people are just stepping up to moderate and sort of categorize this is just like a key testament to how incredible what's going on with the governance is looking like.
Oh, it's getting a bit towards the end. I'm wondering, for people who haven't really asked any question, I was supposed to say I do karaoke style, but we completely forgot about it. Like, people who hasn't really asked questions, do you guys have any questions, or you are just happy to just listening what other people's questions?
Yeah,
I think it's pretty good. I see I see one question in the chat here. Do you like the 2 to 98 bootstrapping pools better than Gnosis Dutch auctions or Uniswap BZX style? I think there's a middle ground. I think what happened with YFI and the scarcity of the token is what caused it to pump so hard so fast. I'm actually more of a proponent of figuring out how to not make your token go up 100x in the first day. Because as Nathan was alluded to, basically everyone's yield farming strategy just gets completely screwed when the token price moons. So like internally, we've been talking with projects about how do you launch a yield farming strategy that doesn't just pump the token, because there's only 5 of them on the market, and that's setting the entire price of your token. And how do you launch in a way that there can be real price discovery, and then basically set the yield farming parameters around that. So I think that there is merit in the Gnosis Dutch auction was good for MStable for finding a price. You know, it was definitely a little bit clunky, but definitely better than Uniswap front running. I think there's going to be a middle ground where projects are launching some pool on the market after a period of time, but there's not really like a right answer yet in terms of what's been the best. You know, it really depends on the goals of the project. And unfortunately, I think that to many teams, getting a high token price often takes priority over the longevity and sustainability of their yield farming program. So I'm optimistic that more teams will take a step back, not worry about listing at 100x on day one, and incur some sort of vesting schedule where people can yield farm, but they're not able to liquidate right away and sort of have these crazy dynamics in place.
I have, like, I think I asked most of the question I had on the list. One thing confused me, one question, one thing really confused me is like when I first got into gov finance, I saw like 3 or 4 different ones, and it just says Y, and I have no idea what that Y thing does. And also, what's the process of having someone having pool into the gov finance? Is it like a Uniswap, anyone can put any pool, or is it just happen? I saw like even Andre, I didn't know if Andre is part of the gov team or it's completely separate. So how does that get added? Do you know?
Yeah, so Curve in particular only adds pools to their front end that they help incubate themselves. So Andre worked very closely with the Curve team on the Y pool and on the BUSD pool, probably far more on the Y pool. But those pools that you see are just added by Curve team themselves. It's not permissionless to the fact that anyone can add it to the front end. You know, anyone could basically create a Curve type pool, make a contract that does the same things, but you're only going to see the ones that Curve supports on their front end. And the reason that they are on the front end is because they are adding liquidity to like same peg assets is the way I describe it. So like Curve now has the REN BTC pool and the SBTC pool. And this gives you an easy way to swap between different flavors of Ethereum based Bitcoin with low slippage. And that I think is like the whole premise of Curve. You know, with stable coins, the way that their AMM is designed is that there's not going to be a lot of slippage if you want to swap between DAI and USDC, DAI and Tether and all this kind of stuff. It's like ignoring the actual yield aspect of it. I think that the main goal of Curve is to be able to allow you to swap between tokens and not incur slippage if it's the same, you know, price pegged token.
So apart from Y and the BUSD, it's managed by Curve team?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's just like Andre thought, oh, I have things called Y, and he asked Curve team like, hey, can you just add it on the website? And the Curve team said yes. Is it how it
more or less, yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
but this is the whole thing, right? This is why a governance token is coming, is because in the future, people will be able to stake into a DAO and basically be the ones that say, hey, we want this pool to be added. They'll vote on that with Curve tokens, and that's how stuff will get updated in the future.
I see.
And Cooper, the only difference between YUSD and BUSD is that True USD is replaced with Binance USD?
Yep, exactly. Same with the SUSD one and SUSDs in there.
Why not have, could you put 5 all together? Like why have 2 very, very similar ones with just one with True USD and one with Binance USD?
I think it was just the ordering and the way the contracts were deployed. I don't think that that's not able to happen. I just think that, you know, Y pool is one of the first ones. You know, that gained a lot of traction. Then SUSD started getting a little bit of traction. So they deployed a new contract that incorporated that, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think it's, you know, unrealistic to pool them in the future, but yeah, having the different pools allows, so for example, Synthetics has that ongoing incentive program where if you're in the Y or the SUSD pool, you can stake those tokens and get SNX rewards. And I think that having that sort of segmented design allows projects to incentivize specific pools over other ones.
SBTC it is, right? It's the BTC one, right?
And the SUSD one.
Ah, gotcha.
Just to clarify something, I think, Sky, that you said earlier, if I own Curve LP tokens, they're accruing value by themselves through being a yield aggregator. But then also I can take those LP tokens and stake them and earn a bit of a double dip there. And those are separate earning mechanisms, correct?
Yep, exactly.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool because this is like this whole DeFi token stacking that's going on right now. You know, the reason why it got added to Balancer is because after you put those Curve tokens in Balancer, you're also getting Balancer governance tokens too. So you're getting Curve, then you're getting Balancer, and then you're getting YFI. So like people are definitely looking for ways to stack this. And as I alluded to earlier with that USDC vault, what happens is that the vault goes ahead and gets all those tokens for you. So it gets MTA, Balancer, Curve, all these things. And then it just sells them as they get it and then just rebalances it back into USDC. So you don't have to do anything on your end. You just enter with USDC, leave with more USDC.
So Cooper, oh, go ahead, James.
I'm sorry. Are there any, I don't know what the right word is, safeguards built into like the Y curve where let's just say, you know, TUSD goes to shit and gets hacked and starts going down to 30 cents, are there any breaks on it, or does all the money flow to the highest rate of interest? I guess.
That
what
is
I mean
the
by that
biggest.
is, if there's a hack on something, on Compound or something, and somebody starts stealing all the TUSD, are there any breaks in any of these where, I don't know what the right word is, is there any way to stop the train, or does it just all get sucked over to out the hole on the other side?
So that's really the biggest reason that other stablecoin platforms have popped up. So for example, MStable has guards against that. DUSD, DeFi dollars, this new project what popped up that has guards against that. Curve in particular, I don't believe has blockers against that. So for example, if DAI goes to 1 cent, the entirety of the pool will just rebalance to DAI. So this is something that people have definitely voiced as a concern before, but luckily we haven't seen a situation where that's been an issue yet, knock on wood.
My understanding on that was that if the system sees if the system sees that people are pulling all liquidity out of Compound, it implies that something is wrong with Compound, and that this would try to also do that, but maybe it would be do it too late or after it saw a high yield. But when I did hear something that if something was being withdrawn from one of the pools, the system would also try to do that too, I think, but not possible.
I would envision if there's sort of a Black Thursday type event where one of these stable coins went to zero, against sort of the ethos of DeFi, I would imagine Curve would probably do some sort of admin thing to just be like, yo, pause everything, you can't withdraw right now or something. But again, I can't confidently speak to what would happen in those scenarios, as I have no idea how that would actually play out in practice.
Can I ask one last big picture question for Cooper, which I think everyone would probably be interested in? So this is all built, this DeFi system's all built on top of each other. There's lots of people earning. You can earn real yields by lending, and you can also earn real money by protocols that are acquiring users through yield farming and giving out effectively tokens, which you could think of as equity or governance and future financial value, which is also money coming out of the future of that protocol. So there's a few different ways to earn, but in all systems, at the end of the day, that only works if at the end of the day, there are real customers who are willing to pay money for something that they get value from, which is a real product. And the only thing that's happening right now is there are some people that are willing to borrow crypto and actually pay real interest in order to do something, which is mainly leverage, or I think it's only leverage and trading, right? No one's borrowing crypto to then buy a house or a car. So this whole thing works, but don't there have to be more real customers of this entire system that are willing to actually pay money? And that money is the only money that eventually will go to other people in the system. And what is that end customer thing that customers will pay money for other than leverage?
Yeah, I think that you make a really great point. And right now what's going on is completely sporadic. This yield farming craze is only working because you can make more money off of borrowed capital than it actually costs to take out that capital. And so long as that's existing, people are just going to abuse the shit out of it. I think that the end goal is people being able to take out a loan permissionlessly without having to go and do a credit report, without having to go to a bank or something like that. If we can have a Web3 reputation score where you can take out capital and use it at your own convenience without having to interact with anyone else, I think that those are the types of situations that will give DeFi credence and sort of catch hold when someone can figure out how to do that in a way such that it can't be gamed and people can't just run off with the money.
Yeah, but borrowing money is borrowing money when you don't have money or you need money to do something with it. That's the end case. I guess that's the end case of finance, but in DeFi as well. Yeah.
Yeah, one of them. I think that for me, just this freedom of access where I can go to Uniswap, where I can go to any of these pools and sort of put my capital to work and sort of earn a higher interest. In traditional markets, we see a savings account as passive where you just put it somewhere and you get a really low return. But I do always think that for at least the next foreseeable future, DeFi yields are going to drastically outperform traditional yields with something as simple as the DAI savings rate. And so long as those opportunities are there, I think that that's a good use case that would be able to get people on board, you know, assuming, knock on wood, nothing terrible happens that affects their capital in the first place.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, I think time is up. One thing I'm not quite sure, did Igor actually turn up or was it fake from Peter?
That was Peter.
It's fake, it's
Yeah,
fake.
okay, so we gonna get, so that his 5 die gonna be split across or everybody else. But so this one, we created a new feature called contribution on a kickback. So when you finish, I'm gonna finalize and you're gonna receive the email. And so you have to press withdraw to get your money. But we have a feature to put portion of the stake to contribute to Cooper. So if you so like you gain something, please be generous. So he might do this again. That's about it. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, can
Everyone for joining.
Cooper, you should do this once a week with different protocols, and people will pay, and make this bigger, and people will pay.
Yeah, it was super fun. I love diving into these stuff, and it's great to hear the questions people have for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, this was a lot better that everyone could talk and actually have access rather than a larger group setting.
Yeah, and we actually met, you know, like usually like you don't really meet anyone, you're just like listening, and it's same as podcasts, right? But like this is good, like real meetup. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you for organizing, Makoto. This was awesome.
See you guys.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Yeah.
See ya.